Hi guys, today we're going to learn how to draw a landscape like the famous landscape painter Bob Ross. Remember, a landscape is a picture of land. So to do our picture today, we're going to need a pencil, and for next week, some crayons, and if you would like to, some watercolor paint. If you don't have watercolor paint, or if you're not allowed to use it, crayons, markers, or colored pencils will be fine to color this. For today, we're going to start by drawing our landscape painting. So in order to get started, we need to hold our paper so that it is wider. This is also called hamburger format, or in art, landscape format. The first thing we draw in a landscape is the horizon line. The horizon line is the line that separates all the ground area from all the sky area. And since this is a landscape, we want our horizon line to be higher than halfway up our page because we want more land in our landscape. So when I draw it, I'm going to do a line higher than halfway across my paper. It does not have to be perfectly straight because ground is not perfectly straight. It is bumpy. Also, we want to make sure that we're drawing lightly because we're going to be erasing stuff a lot today. Now, when we draw a landscape, we want some things to look like they're closer to us and some things to look like they're farther away. In art, this is called depth, or the space inside your painting. So things that are closer to us are in the foreground. So they come before everything else. Things that are closer to us look bigger and they start lower down on the page. So the first thing I'm going to draw is going to be a tree. So this tree needs to be really big because it's in the foreground. I'm going to start it above the horizon line, and I'm going to draw two straight lines next to each other for the trunk. These lines can come out a little at the bottom for the roots. If you want to draw some like letter U shapes there for the roots, that's fine. And I'm going to draw a letter V at the top to show the branches. Now the branches are going to be like letter U shapes or bumps that are going to be so big they go off the edge of the page, like that. So this is my first tree in the foreground. Again, notice I'm drawing kind of lightly. Hopefully you can still see it on camera because we're going to erase. Notice that I can still see the horizon line in front of my tree, but the tree is in the foreground. It's in front of the horizon line, so I need to erase this line. And if you need to redraw your tree after you erased it, you can. Now we said things that are closest to us are in the foreground. Things that are farther away from us in our picture are in the background, and they're the smallest. So if I drew another tree in the background, I'm going to do my two straight lines touching my horizon line up here in the corner, really tiny. Again, my letter V and my U-shaped bushy branches. Okay, so we have something in the foreground, something in the background, and it looks like it's farther away because it's really small. The other part of our picture we're going to talk about today is the middle ground. So the foreground comes before everything else, the background is in back of everything else, so the middle ground is in the middle. Very good. So this tree is going to be in the middle of these two. It's going to be medium. So again, I'm going to do my two lines. These lines are not going to touch the horizon line, and they're not going to touch the bottom. Again, if you want to do some U shapes for some roots, you can. The V shape for the branches, and then the leaves. And again, this tree is behind this one. So when I'm making my branch lines, make sure they don't go in front of this tree. Okay. So now I have the three trees that are going to make up my landscape. This helps show depth or space in our landscape. Now, whatever else you add to your landscape is up to you, and we have a lot of different options. So, for example, I could draw some mountains in my landscape. Remember, mountains would be really big, so they would be behind everything else. They're going to go in the background, because if I try to draw a mountain in the foreground, it's going to cover up everything I've already drawn. If you want to, you can draw a sun or a moon. You can do some clouds in the background. it's a cloudy day or if it's raining or snowing. Bob Ross usually likes to put some water in his pictures. If you want to do like a lake or a pond, you can do an oval shape somewhere in your picture. I always like to draw rivers. So I'm going to draw a windy kind of S shape like that. Now again, things that are farther away from us are smaller. So when I draw the other side of the river, it's going to be close to the first side. And then as it comes down my page, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Just like that. Maybe I want to have a waterfall in the background. So I have some waterfall going like that up my mountain. And since this is a river, maybe I even want to put a koi fish in it. Just like we learned how to draw earlier. Again, this is your landscape scene, so whatever you want to put in it is fine by me. Just remember the rules. Stuff that is closer to you is bigger. Stuff that is farther away from you is smaller, and also higher up on the page. Okay, maybe you want to add some flowers. But again, if you have lots of flowers, they should get smaller as you go back. Okay. Once you're designing your landscape, you have everything in your landscape that you want. We are going to go over all of our pencil lines with crayons if we are painting our landscape, or markers or colored pencils if you're not painting. It's up to you. Oh, maybe even just for fun, I want to make this a volcano. That just occurred to me. That might be a fun thing to do. So I'm going to add some lava, some rocks getting spit out, maybe some smoke. Yeah, just for fun, because it's my landscape. Why not, right? So when we outline with crayon, we want to pick colors that things are actually going to be. So when I outline my tree, I want to outline the trunk in brown. And if you don't hit your pencil lines exactly, remember it's not a big deal, because you can always paint over or erase it anyway. Make sure you get all your pencil lines. If something is far in the background and you think it might be too hard for you to paint, you can just color it in with the crayon. Tree leaves should be green, so make sure you fill that in green. Again, this tree back here, probably too hard to color in with paint, so I'm just going to color it in that way. Don't forget to do your horizon line. I might do this with a lighter shade of green so it's different from your tree leaves. And do some grass lines by your trees, like that. A lot of people do mountains really, really dark, but in fact, when mountains are far away from you, they're actually lighter. So I'm going to get a lighter blue to do my mountain line. You might have seen that when you watched Bob Ross's videos. And I'm going to use the same light blue to outline my clouds, because I'm going to do my sky kind of light blue too. If you have a white crayon, you could also use a white crayon to outline your clouds. Just make sure you're careful, because it's really hard to see white crayon on white. I'm going to use a red for this lava magma that's coming down and spewing out here. A yellow for my sun. And a different kind of bluey green for my rivery waterfall thing. Let's see. I'm also going to use that yellow for the middles of my flowers. Maybe a purple for the edges of my flowers. And again, I'm filling in my flowers with crayon because I think they're going to be too small for me to paint. Oh, almost forgot this flower over here. And maybe an orange for my fish. It's really important to be outlining with crayon because it'll help keep your paint colors in the areas they're supposed to be. It won't be perfect, but it'll help. Alrighty, that looks good to me. If you saw you missed any pencil lines, feel free to erase them if you want to, or you can just leave them to paint over. It's up to you. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Put away my crayons, and then I'm going to paint. So when we paint, we need to make sure that we are using water. My water's a little dirty, so I could probably change it out, but we'll try it for now. Watercolors, the first word is water, so it's really important to get your brush nice and wet, and then wiggle it into the color you want. When we do a painting like this, it's important to start with the lightest colors and work our way darker because we don't want our water to get too muddy. I don't really have anything yellowy, which would be my lightest color in this picture because I already filled it in with crayon. If I wanted to do a little bit more, I could, just to fill it in a little bit better. But what I want to do first is a lighter green color for my grass. Now, I don't have a lighter green color here, but I can make one by blending my colors. I'm going to clear a little spot here on the lid. I'm going to get a whole bunch of yellow, so I'm going to wiggle it in my yellow and then tap it here, wiggle and tap, wiggle and tap, wiggle and tap, and I can mix it with a little bit of green that was there. Maybe clean my brush, get another touch of green to make a really nice light yellowy green for my grass. That looks good. Because I'm also going to be painting my tree leaves green, and I don't want them to be the same green because then it'll all look too much the same. So really nice and careful, painting back and forth. I'm going to fill in my grass. Notice how light my color is. I see a lot of people when they do watercolors, their colors are very dark. And we want our colors to be lighter because they'll blend easier. It means they have more water in them. They'll spread easier. And it's a lot easier to fix it if you put a color you don't want if it's lighter than if it's darker. I'm kind of running out of this color, so I need to make a bit more. Wiggle into my yellow, tap, tap, tap. Wiggle in my yellow, tap, tap, tap. Wash my brush, grab a little green, and mix. And then I've got some more of that color. So this is my biggest area. I'm going to fill it all in. Fill in all my grass. Now, if you wanted your landscape to be a little bit different, like maybe you wanted it to be more like dirt, there wasn't grass, you might be coloring this brown. Or if you wanted to be a snowscape, you wanted there to be snow on the ground, you could be coloring this like a light blue to show the snow. But when we're done, we don't want any areas to stay white, because if you leave an area white, it looks like you forgot it. It looks unfinished. So make sure you're at least putting, even if it's very, very light and watery, make sure you're at least putting a little bit of color in every part of your picture. Nice and slow, side to side. All right, Now I don't want to paint anything that's touching the green because the green's still wet and I want to give it a chance to dry. So while it's drying, I'm going to do the sky because I have that mountain layer in between. So I'm going to get a little bit of blue for my sky, but again, I don't want it too dark. Oh, that's a little dark. So I'm going to spread this around. I'm going to get some more water to lighten it up. And it's okay if it's not all exactly the same shade of blue because there's a lot going on in skies that makes the blue color change. Okay, and again, I don't want to leave the clouds pure white because it'll look like I forgot them. So instead I'm going to wash just about all the blue out of my brush and just go over the clouds with a bit of water. They'll pull a tiny bit of blue from the sky into them, so it won't look like I forgot them, but they'll also still be pretty white. If that's still too dark and we don't like the way that looks, you can always take the edge of a bit of paper towel or tissue and blot it out. It's called blotting when we tap with the tissue. And it takes a little bit out, but again, still a little bit of blue in there. Now my mountains, I want to be a little bit more gray because I want them to be more like rocky. But we're not going to go there just yet because again, this is all wet and we want to give that a chance to dry. So let's do our trees here. So I'm going to dip and wiggle into my brown. It's a little dark, but that's okay. And again, ping pong coloring side to side, fill in my trees. I like to paint my trees up and down like this because if you see the brush lines, it'll look a little bit more like bark rather than side to side. So the direction of our strokes, our brush strokes, can be important in what we're painting. Now notice how when I paint like this, the paint kind of stutters and is too white. It means I don't have enough water. So I'm going to just dip my brush in the water and without dipping it in the paint, just use the water to help spread it around. Just like that. Now it's getting a bit light, so I'm going to go back to my paint. It's kind of a dance. You know, going a little bit back and forth between paint and water. There we go. Alrighty, that's still a little wet. This is still a little wet. I'm going to go for my river next. So for my river, I don't want it to be the exact same blue as the sky because I want it to be a little bit different. I'm going to take some blue. I'm going to put it in that same area where I put my grass before because I had some green there. I'm going to wash off my brush, grab some green, and add in a little bit of green to that blue. Oh, that looks nice. So kind of a little bit between the grass and the sky. If you have a piece of scrap paper, you can always test your color on scrap paper before putting it in your painting to make sure it's a color that you want. And again, I'm painting along the curves of the river so it looks more wavy like water. I'm not going side to side like I did with the grass. I'm not going up and down like I did with the tree trunks. I'm painting along the contours. Contour means the outside line of the object. Don't paint in front of your fish. They'll look muddy. Paint around your fish. If you did fish, if you did a river, again, there's almost infinite options for doing landscape paintings. You do not have to do a landscape painting that looks like mine. If you had a whole forest, maybe you chose to do more trees than I showed you how to do. If you chose to have animals in your picture or people, that's fine. Just make sure you follow the rules for painting them too. that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go back to my trees. So I'm going to paint the leaves of my trees. Again, get some green. Now when I paint my trees, I want them to look more like leaves. And leaves are not straight and they're not wavy. They kind of look like this. So I'm making circles with my brush to make it more like leaves. This is also called scumbling in art when you make circles like this. So I'm going to scumble my trees by making little circles with my brush. Maybe make this tree a little bit darker because it's behind the first tree. And again, try your best not to leave any part of your picture white. Maybe even poke it a few times to make it look more like leaves. If this goes over your brown a little bit, that's okay, because leaves can blow in front of the trees. I'll just make it look more realistic. There we go. Now, last but not least, the mountains. Make sure we don't forget the mountains. So I want my mountains to be kind of like a lighter gray blue for stone. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue. I'm going to even use this because I have that set already. And just a touch of black. Mix a touch of black into my blue, and I should have this kind of like stony gray. Again, not too dark. I'm going to fill in my mountains just so that they're a different color from the sky and a different color from the water. You want them to be their own thing. And again, you can take your paper towel and you can blot it to make more of a mountainy texture. The feel of the mountains. More like rocky, like that. Oh. And then of course, last but not least, the lava. So I'm going to dip my brush into my red, get it all really, really nice and wet. And then get that lava in there. And it's okay if it blends with the stone of the mountain a little bit because, hey, it's lava. It's coming down anyway. Ah, yeah, I really like the way that looks. All right. Maybe I want to go back, do a little bit more purple in my flowers. But other than that, I think I'm pretty much done. I think this looks nice. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you made some really beautiful landscapes too, and I can't wait to see them when they're done. I'll see you guys next time.